Hey YouTube, by the end of this video, I guarantee you will be able to change your own tires on your bike. This was something I put off for many years. I used to take my bike always to the local bike shop or some bike chain because I could never quite get through the process myself. And people used to say, it's easy, but I always ran into some small problems. So in this video, I'm gonna go through the whole process and I'm gonna highlight every single thing along the way that can go wrong when you're trying to change your tire and or inner tube. So from the beginning, you're going to need some very basic tools. You're going to need tire levers. This is my favorite one. It's about, you get 3 for a couple of euros, couple of pounds in a bike shop, and I'll explain why later, why it's my favorite. It's it's by Schwalzer, the tire manufacturer. You're also going to need a pump. Don't be a cheapskate. Don't buy just one like this. You'll never be able to get enough pressure in the tire. Don't buy the smaller size one either. This is for absolute emergencies. It's not for kind of general maintenance for the bike. You need one that stays on the ground like this and you push down with both hands. In the shop you will have a choice between one like this, let's say it's 20 euros, and one with a reading on it that shows you the pressure. It's about 25 euros. Get this one. Don't just save 5 euros and then guess the tire pressure. You can overinflate your tire, overinflate the tire for one of your kids, your family, your friends, and the tire could explode and they could hurt themselves. So this is the best one to get. I got it for $12.99 from Cora, the Belgian supermarket shop. Okay, so you also need a inner tube. You have to work out, are you replacing the tire on the outside or the inner tube or both? So you may just want to do the tire if all the grip's gone or you see some cracks so it's starting to wear through. You may want to replace the tire. You should probably replace the inner tube at the same time. Or you may have a new tire but it's completely flat because of the problem with the inner tube on the inside. So to get the inner tube you need the code. The code is on the side of the tire. You need to look very carefully at the type of valve. You have Schrader and Presta valves basically. Schrader's the one for the cars, the big one. These are more useful because you can pump them up at service stations, gas stations. People have pumps in their car that you can use in an emergency. The Presta one is smaller and it has a nut on it, which means you can release the pressure yourself by doing that nut, but you need often an adapter. So if you have a pump like this, you'll need an adapter to go on the end to pump your Presta inner tube. These sorts of pumps, they have 2 heads on the end, one for Schrader, one for Presta. So you've bought everything you need. By the way, at the bike shop, don't be intimidated if you're worried about the bike shop that they're going to make you feel stupid or start firing questions at you and saying, oh, you should let us do it. When you're asking for all these things like the inner tube and the tire, you can take the old inner tube and tire with you in a plastic bag. So if you can't remember what type of valve you need or the tire size, take the old one and just show it to them. And then they've got no excuses not to give you the exact replacement. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is take your wheel off the bike. Now, if it's the front wheel, that's pretty easy. There's a couple of things that can go wrong. You may need to disengage the braking system. If the tire is not completely flat, the tire may be getting stuck by the brakes if you've got rim brakes. So you need to open up the brakes. If you've got these old style bikes, it's like a horseshoe. You may need a adjustable wrench to undo the horseshoe. The point is, look at the braking mechanism and just make sure that's not going to snag on the whole wheel when you take it off. To take off the wheel, you've either got a quick release system or you've got 2 nuts here. Again, it's an adjustable wrench. So you take the wheel off, you make sure the braking system's disengaged. Now, that's if it's the front wheel. If it's the back wheel, like this, and it's got a cassette on it, here's something that can go wrong. You're trying to get the wheel off and it's not coming off. And that's because the derailleur or the chain is stuck underneath here. You need to pull that back. It's on like a spring, basically. You know the derailleur looks like an S and it'll get trapped under here. So you need to pull the derailleur back. The chain will still be on the back wheel. You may need to just hook the chain off or just carefully take the wheel off and take it down. Your bike It's easier if you turn the bike upside down, so the seat's on the floor and the handlebars on the floor, or if you have a bike stand, which maybe you can see in the back, maybe not, is another way of doing it. So you got the wheel off. Now, if the tyre and inner tube are completely flat, well, the inner tube's completely flat, it's just going to peel off. You just peel the whole thing off. However, two things that can go wrong here. Number one, the inner tube, where it goes through the hole, the valve hole, can't see it on here, well, wherever it is, there's a hole where the valve goes in. Sometimes there's a ring on the other side which traps the inner tube. So you need to take that little ring, it's like a small nut, unscrew that so the inner tube will come off. If the bike's been outside for ages or it's been in the cellar for ages, sometimes the tyre and the inner tube are like stuck to the rim, or they're stuck together. And that's where these bike levers are very helpful, because you see this one, it's got a little notch at the end, and that, I find, that separates the tyre from the inner tube quite nicely. Often it feels like you're really having to rip the tyre off if it's stuck, and then little bits of like rubber are coming off and it's hard and you're hurting yourself. It shouldn't be that hard. You're just trying to hook the lever in, slide it around, slide it on the other side, so this is coming over the rim, and then the whole thing will just peel off. Another tip, if the valve is in the wheel here, try starting on the other end. There's a little bit more slack here. Sometimes the valve, where it's gone through the wheel, is a bit of tension there, and it's hard to start here, so start on the other side. Peel the tyre and the inner tube off, get your replacement tyre and inner tube. Now, this is the way I do it. Some people are going to say I don't do it, you shouldn't do it like that, but this way works the best for me. I've done it on hundreds of bikes. Get the new inner tube, pump it up like 20 to 30%. So it's just got a bit of form. It's not completely hard, but you just want the new one to have the shape, basically. And you're going to put it inside the old tyre, if the tyre is okay, or your new tyre. Very, very important. If you're using your old tyre, before you put the inner tube in, the last one's gone flat for whatever reason. If you're not sure why it's gone flat, look very carefully inside the tyre to make sure there's not any glass, stones, dirt that has made the old inner tube go flat, because otherwise the same thing's going to happen again. I usually shine a torch around it, and then I get a cloth and I wipe the inside of the tyre completely as well before putting the new inner tube in. Pump up that inner tube 30% so it's got the form, then put it through the hole, put the ring back on, so your wheel has now got the tyre. As you're doing that, just feel around the tyre. Look, make sure it's even when it's gone inside. So you can turn this around basically and use the other way to kind of push it back into the rim, in the lip of the wheel. You can use this the other way around to kind of push it all the way back in, and then just make sure it's evenly distributed, because this is another thing that can go wrong. The inner tube can kind of clump or get stuck in certain places, so just give a feel all the way around to make sure it seems evenly distributed. Now when you're pumping it back, so you put it back on your bike, you start, or you pump it up first, either way. It's usually it's better to put it on the bike first, because if you pump it up first it may not get through the brakes, it might be harder to get on. So put it back on your bike. As you're pumping it up, just take it easy and look very carefully if it's kind of ballooning in any parts of the tyre. This is really dangerous. Like I said, the inner tube can kind of get snagged or caught in a certain part, and then that part inflates, and then as you're inflating it, it can just go boom, and it can really hurt your ears. It's a shock, but it almost feels like it could burst your eardrum. So make sure it's evenly distributed, and just kind of gently or carefully pump it up. It's another reason why it's great to have the tyre pressure indicator there, because obviously this should be going up uniformly. If it suddenly stops at a much lower level, then you need to find out why, because the inner tube may be stuck in a certain place. Okay, now you've taken the wheel off, you put the new tyre and inner tube, you've put it back on, you need to redo your brakes, because remember you had to probably open up your brakes. How do you get your wheel exactly in the center? Well, you do this by eye. You just have to look exactly at the frame, and then there'll be that kind of back fork or front fork where it's going in. You just have to do it by eye, basically. There's not a tool to line it up perfectly. Well, there probably is, but it's not very common. So you do it by eye, reattach your brakes. Make sure now that the brakes aren't rubbing on one side or the other. You may need to use a Allen key to, or an adjustable wrench to readjust your brakes to make sure they fit. Hope that's been useful. Hope that helps. If so, give me a thumbs up. If you've got any questions, write them below. If you want more information on the background to bike maintenance and selling bikes and making a living from that, check out my ebook. The link is below. Thanks.